Welcome back to Metropole TV, The Smart Investor. My name is Ali Khan Sachin. In the studio, we've got a great guest, Mohamed Wehliye. Mohamed, thank you for making the time.
Thank you, Ali Khan.
I know every year you come back home for Eid, if I'm not mistaken. We were just discussing how you come from Wehliye originally in Garissa, so it's a pleasure to have you back, my brother.
Thank you very much, Ali Khan. Nice to see you again.
And just to give everybody an idea, Mohamed is a special advisor at the Saudi Arabian Monetary Authority, which is the Saudi Arabian central bank effectively. And you just go and do some numbers and you'll understand what type of flows Mohamed is dealing with day to day. Mohamed, we went back, Stephen and I, to a tweet you put out in 2016 where you actually asked for exactly what we had, this Madaraka Day, masterstroke. Tell us, give us, can you frame this thing for us and tell us, everyone keeps banging on my Twitter feed about India. India. Is it India again? Is it something else? What is it? What is the outcome?
Well, I think when it comes to demonetization, India is a very recent case. November 8th, I think, 2016, when Modi woke up and surprised everybody. And there has been a lot of debate in terms of whether the Indian one has been a success or not a success. Now, why do you do demonetization? I think that's where we need to go back.
Okay.
And that is, generally there are three major objectives. One, to deal with black money market, so which is like corruption money and all that. There's the issue also of tax, and there's the issue of counterfeit. Now, whether something has been a success, sometimes people look at it from the perspective of whatever they're looking at. And at that time, I think India were looking at corruption also, just like we're looking at corruption now. And many people say, well, as you've seen on social media, especially the last 24 hours, it's some people saying it failed in India, it's going to fail here.
I saw that, yes.
I don't think it's going to be the case. First of all, India was a different case because if you look at the way India did it is totally different. India surprised everybody, I think probably including the central bank. So they had to print money after the announcement was made.
Oh, that's a good point. So he caught them wrong-footed.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, what that did then was there was no enough money to replace the money that people were returning. So there was a cash crunch. And you're talking about 320 billion US dollars equivalent. Yes.
In India.
Yes. Here we're talking about what? $2 billion?
$2 billion equivalent.
Peanuts.
Yeah.
Now, the second thing is, in our case, the central bank governor, Dr. Njoroge, took advantage of a process that was already ongoing.
Yes.
So technically, demonetization costs us nothing.
So it was already, we were already looking to replace our existing notes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So India paid a lot of money to replace their money.
Yes.
To print the money. It cost them a lot of money. The central bank P&L was hit because of that. In our case, whether we demonetized or not, we were still going to replace our currency. So it was, in my view, a very shrewd move in the sense that I was going to replace my money anyway.
Yes.
It's not going to cost me anything. So why not then sneak in this? And a lot of people, a lot of Kenyans don't see that this is two in one.
Yes.
So there's the replacement of the money,
yeah,
including the 1,000 note itself.
Yes.
And then there is the withdrawal of the 1,000. The intention for, the two are different, but basically the governor killed two birds with one stone.
So he was quite subtle in his timing and
It
using the opportunity.
It is.
And I saw the president was quite excited.
It's true. And I like it because in Kenya, you and I know that it's very hard to keep things secret.
Yes.
I was watching Madaraka Day and I saw a lot of very senior people were shocked.
Yes,
Faces,
you were watching the faces.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it looks like it was really, really kept secret. Very, very few people knew that it was going to. I mean, some people probably were speculating at some stage that it was going to happen, like we did.
Yes.
In 2016, I said it's the right thing to do, let's do it. But we didn't know when it was going to happen. And that's the most important thing, when. Because it's counterproductive. Sometimes it can cause problems if it's too short, the period, if you don't do it well. And also if you then tell people, I'm going to do it anyway, then you're not going to achieve the objectives that you had.
So technically speaking, would you expect a short-term stimulus as people who've got this money sitting under a mattress? And secondly, is that 1,000 shilling, the old one, going to be trading now at a discount if you're trying to do a bulk conversion?
Yeah. I think there's some people who say that.
There are all kinds. I saw everyone advertising their services, saying, if you need any help, come to me.
I mean, if you look at the case of India, some people say, in the case of India, 99% of the money went back.
Yeah.
Only 1% was extinguished.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah. That's why people are saying it failed.
Yes.
Because then it looks like there was no unaccounted money in the system anyway. But then in India itself, some people actually said it's because people sold the 500 rupee and the 2,000 rupee at a discount.
That's what I was. That's right.
So,
right. You would, wouldn't you, if you were caught on that side?
True. I mean, but it depends. It depends on how much money is involved. It depends also on. One thing with this kind of exercise.
Yes.
Is it's very hard to know. I mean, look, we have 200 and what? I think the governor. If you look at the total value.
I saw that.
Yeah, it's about 200 and I think 217.
Yes.
16
billion.
If you look at that number, we're talking about this being in circulation.
Yes.
But what does that mean?
Yeah.
Money in your pocket is in circulation. Money in drawers in shops in circulation. 50% of that could be under mattresses.
Yes.
So it's very hard to tell and do an analysis and say how much of this money is actually bad money.
Yes.
So the only way we can know is when the central bank receives all the notes,
Yes.
counts them, and says, okay, we were expecting 215 billion, we received 215 billion. Then it means everything is accounted for.
Wow.
If they receive 200 billion, then we know 15 billion is basically
Extinguished.
Yeah, extinguished. And then that 15 billion reduces the balance sheet, the liabilities of the central bank. Effectively, it's like giving 15 billion for free to the central bank.
So, and they're bound
Profit.
to, it's a perfect trade.
Yeah. So the more money that does not come back to the central bank, the better it is for them, and of course the economy.
But also will give us a view as to how much money was elicited.
True.
and in the system. This is the only way we're going to find out,
True.
right?
True. The other thing that surprised me today is when the central bank announced
About 5 million.
when they announced the total amount.
Yes.
The 215 billion
Of physical cash and
physical cash. If you look at that, if you look at I think the December numbers,
Yes.
it was far much higher, 237.
So what's happened?
So between December and now, 6 months, what happened? Maybe new products were developed and Kenyans have gone. I mean, I could see fixed deposits gone up. So maybe you're looking at new products and Kenyans are now investing in those products over the last 6 months. Or is it, I don't know, did Wehliye side of political side had leakage and took their money back? You don't know.
And I suppose the clever thing would have been to have converted it a few months ago, right?
True.
Into some other currency.
True.
So overall, you think this is a silver bullet? You think you're really positive about it, from what I can see?
I think, yes, it's going to be positive, and we have to look at it not from corruption only perspective. I mean, the first thing that came to Kenyans, the minds of Kenyans, is basically, oh, this is to fight, particular individuals. This is, it's meant to fight corruption. No, you have to look at the full package. And the most important thing is that on a net basis,
Yes.
I think it's going to be positive. One, the CASA, which is the current accounts and savings account, will improve. In India, it did improve.
You mean more money gets sucked into the system?
Asset management improved. If you look at the numbers in India, asset management after demonetization improved. If you look at tax, it's a one-time, it has one-time impact on tax also. A lot of people came into the formal system. Of course.
Would you expect such a big move into the formal system?
I think so. I think so. But it depends on KRA. I mean, KRA can take advantage of this this particular process and bring people, and then now people are going to open new accounts. They'll have to look at people's money and income and what is in those accounts. But it depends on KRA. I mean, if KRA itself is struggling with corruption, then they're not going to take advantage of it.
But what you're talking about is the data science opportunity, right?
Data science opportunity is massive.
Massive. Yeah.
The other thing is, of course, counterfeit.
Yes.
In India, counterfeit, numbers were basically, they've gone down.
Yes.
But the counterfeit for the small denominations also went up.
Oh.
So people will start now, counterfeiting the 500 shillings.
Okay.
And the 100 shillings and the 200 shillings. So they have to be very careful. But on a net basis, I think for the economy, this is very, very good.
What are the risks to this whole thing, in your mind? I mean, what could go wrong?
What could go wrong, I think, is the same stuff that goes wrong in Kenya. We have very good ideas. We have brilliant policy proposals. The problem in Kenya is implementation, seeing it through. We've had a lot of things that we've proposed in the past. We've got, for example, the Treasury Single Account.
Yes.
We've got Office of Budget Management, which the President said in 3 weeks' time, I think, so many years ago, we're going to have it. Never have it. Lifestyle audit, never happened. I think there is lack of courage to do things and see them through. And I think, I don't know why the President and his government gets intimidated when they come up with very good ideas. And then, the cartels that
political pushback.
Yeah. Treasury Single Account is one of the things that I've always looked at, and it's a very, very good thing to do.
That's the idea, what you consolidate all the bank...
into one account.
Into one account.
I mean, the government has 10,000, more than 10,000 accounts. It borrows money when some of those accounts have huge deposits.
So you're talking about an omnibus account, net everything off, and you're going to...
Your expenses, your interest expenses are massive,
yes,
and yet you have a lot of money sitting idle. But if you come and do that and say, I'm going to do that, there are guys who are benefiting from that, who are going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So Kenya, the problem with Kenya is we have a lot of people fighting good policies, and those guys win always.
Yeah.
So in this case, you've seen already people have gone to court. Omtata and others also, Simon Bogwa. I don't see that as a portrait. In my, if you have a picture of a building that has someone's, head, the 200
so
shilling has got a group of people.
There's no merit to
There's
this.
no merit to it. I think it's the usual tactics to try and disrupt anything that is going to be good. But I think in the case of Kenya, unlike India, there are people who've got a lot of money at home.
Yes.
And not necessarily the people they're looking at and targeting, but just generally people who holding cash for various reasons, because of the fact that recently we had this 1 million shilling limit.
Yes.
So that has made even ordinary Kenyans to hold cash, at home. So I expect a lot of money will come into the banking system, and that will be good for the liquidity of the banking system.
Very good, because I mean, hopefully they'll also put that money to work.
Yes, of course. I think that will bring the cost of deposits down.
Yes.
If CASA, the current and savings account goes up, the cost of funds goes down. Hopefully that will translate into lower lending rates.
Yeah.
And that's only good for that can only be good for the banking system.
Now talking about lending rates, this whole debate about our borrowing, what's your perspective from where you're sitting? Are we still, is it blinking amber? Can we fix this if we put our minds to it? Or do you think it's run away from us too much? How do you look at it?
Well, I think there's nothing that cannot be fixed. The problem is the people who are basically in charge feel that they seem not to be worried. They seem to be at ease, and that's what worries me.
Yeah.
I mean, I was listening to the finance, the treasurer, or the cabinet secretary for treasury, saying that we are okay as long as we've not hit 70% of GDP debt, then that's sustainable. I mean, we don't look at abstract stuff like GDP and all that. Cash is king. You and I know.
Yes.
You've worked in a bank.
Yes.
You know that cash flow is the most important thing. Now, if as the control of budget said, we are spending 61 cents for every shilling we collect in tax to pay debts, then it's not rocket science that we're in a fix. And if you look at the revenues, that's what worries me most.
Well, they're not going up.
They're not going up. I mean, in fact, 10 months, we're looking at 1 trillion.
Yeah.
We've got 2 months left. I mean, when we had 2 months left, it was 1 trillion. So maximum, if you project that, is about 1.3 trillion. We budgeted 1.6.
Yeah.
So 300 billion shortfall. That 300 billion, either you cut expenditure which is critical, or basically you borrow, or it becomes accumulated in pending bills. And that is now why you see numbers like deficit number of 5% and 4% don't mean anything. Because if you plan a 5% deficit, you're planning on the basis that you're going to collect 1.6 trillion.
Yeah.
But if you collect only 1.3 trillion, then it means that shortfall is borrowed, your deficit goes up. So I think all those deficits mean nothing. And in any case, that deficit is financed by public investments.
Yes.
That's why Kenyans don't feel it. If you look at the numbers Treasury have put up, and I don't know why they put it up. A friend of mine was telling me maybe the senior managers in Treasury are not aware.
Yeah.
They shot themselves on the foot. Basically, what they're saying is that over the last 3-4 years, private investments was zero.
Yeah.
Contribution of private investments to GDP, zero.
But is that correct? Can't be.
I think so. I think it is correct.
Wow.
So basically, this GDP numbers growth you're talking about is
it's all originating from this infrastructure.
Government.
Yes.
Yeah. And you know that government-driven GDP basically has its own issues.
And that model, that government-driven GDP model, is it still sustainable in the current scenario?
Well, government-driven GDP does not generate revenue because it doesn't generate revenue. That's why our revenues are not growing. So you can say as much as possible, as you want, that we're growing at 6%, 5%.
But it's not.
But the revenue is what you need to look at. The revenues, this year we're going to get as much as we got last year, if we're lucky. If not, maybe just slightly above it.
Which is unusual. If you really had GDP at that kind of rate, you would have thought it'd be throwing off more tax collection.
It's true. There's a lot of issues here, but I think, in my view, our debts are now reaching a point where they are not sustainable. I think we are at a cliff.
Yes.
I'm worried I'm worried about the fact that those who are in charge are not worried. The rosy numbers and all those things, we've seen Greece. The bad thing with this kind of thing is that people have gone through this process and people still go through it.
Yeah.
So, it's going to fail, it's going to fail. It failed in other countries, in corporations, and people still continue to do it. I think it's a critical time in our country. We are now in a position where we have to pay our debts. In order to pay our debts, we have to borrow. If you look at, for example, when someone says, we have $10 billion.
Yes. Record. Yes, 10.06.
Exactly, and our shilling is being sustained by those good reserves. You and I know that more than 50% of those reserves come from foreign debt.
Yes.
Borrowing.
Yes.
Eurobonds. So in 2004, we had 2-point-something billion going into our reserves. The other day we had 2-point-something going into. So those go to the reserves. But a reserve that is funded through foreign borrowing is not sustainable. I mean, you have to go and get your reserves funded through things that are sustainable. If the only thing that is adding into your reserve is debt, then you're losing on one side and just building up something on one side. So I think it's an issue. The shilling has been sustainable.
Yeah, what do you think of the shilling? Because there's been a lot of debate about that. You know, everyone comes out every year, it should be 20% lower. I kind of think that people underestimate the value of the shilling. It's you know, you can trade it, you can go in and out for 50-cent bid offer spread.
It's true.
Regional demand, remittances.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think we've managed the shilling, but at a cost. And if you look at, I've not looked at the recent numbers, but the last time I looked at the numbers, the shilling, there was competition between central bank and the government for money.
Yeah.
So
how do you mean?
Basically, government has a domestic debt target, and that target, the last time I looked at, was about 40-50%, because people would rather take their money to Njoroge,
yes,
who is mopping up liquidity from the system in order to protect the shilling,
yes,
than to give it to Rotich.
Yes.
So there was a
That's
competition.
an interesting way to describe it.
Yeah, because overnight, the central bank was paying, what, 10-11%? And then why would I buy T-bills at 8% or whatever? So there was competition between two arms of the government. And yet, if the central bank leaves the shilling to behave the way it should be,
yes,
it leaves it at the mercy of the markets, we're looking at what? Every 1 shilling, 30 billion extra in our national
that's why
debt.
when I was talking to somebody, I said it's unconscionable for the shilling to go down because we won't be able to afford it. Right?
It's a disaster. It's a disaster.
And we're not an export economy.
True.
I mean, they keep telling me, reduce the shilling, we'll do all these exports. What exports are they talking about? I don't know.
But what is the other side of the coin then?
Yes.
Then it means for me to do that, I have to offer good rates for overnight at the reverse, the repo markets.
Yes.
And then the guy who said, I'm going to raise 300 million from domestic market can only raise 150.
Yeah.
The other 150 would come from where? Tax.
Yes.
Now, if you go to tax money to fund things that were supposed to be funded by T-bills, you're in, deep trouble. So something has to give in.
So
we are now in a tight position.
Yeah, okay. We're in this tight position. What would you be advising the government to do?
Well, advising the government is one thing, and the government listening to you is something else.
If the government were listening to you...
I've always believed that this country needs 3 or 4 consecutive years of primary budget surplus. Yeah.
When did we last have a primary budget surplus?
I can't remember. Yeah, Kibaki. So basically, all you need to do is stop everything else.
Yeah.
Meet your recurrent expenditure and pay your debts. If you do 3 years like that, you're going to then be able to reduce your deficit to 3 to 4%, which is where you want to be.
Yeah.
Unless you do that, the way we're doing things now, of course, 7 to 8% budget deficit for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, ultimately you know where that will end. It's not rocket science.
For people who don't know how it ends, how does it end?
It can only end in one way. I mean, if we continue at the way we're going and the rate at which we're going, and pretending also, because I say sometimes, I mean, the guys who are managing the national treasury are very smart people.
Yes.
They are economists, people who've gone to very good schools, IMF, all of them.
Big IMF, yeah.
All of them. Sometimes I look at it and say, it borders on sabotage. It's very hard for me to say that, but they know the truth. They know what the numbers, they see the numbers, their interpretation, what they mean, they know that. Now, they, however, continue to, for whatever reason, of course, probably you either leave or you support the government policy because there's some politician or some government guy telling you you have to fund this. But if you continue at that rate, Now we're going back to the World Bank. IMF is coming to
But
town.
that was good, cheap money from the World Bank.
Yes,
2%.
it is. It is. But you see, once you go to the World Bank, once you go to IMF, institutions which Kibaki,
Yes.
took us off,
Yeah.
then it means we have to now report to Washington.
Yes.
Basically, structural adjustment programs, all the things that come with conditionalities that come with that kind of support is going to happen. So I think it's very hard for me to say we are approaching default, but we have to be very, very careful. Very, very careful. I don't know why. I don't see any reason why if anybody even would want to be the president of Kenya to come 2022. I see a lot of people campaigning.
Yes, yes.
2022 and after, all these things we are building up now
Are going
will
to be
catch up with us. The other problem we have also is that where is this investment going into?
The return on investment.
Where's Galana Kulalu?
Yes.
Put a lot of money into it. Nothing.
So it's
Look at the
also-
railway.
Yeah.
The railway is one of the big contributors to our GDP.
Yeah.
But what is the railway? The cost of doing business
The
has
big
gone up.
Yes.
It's gone up because of the railway. It was supposed to go down. So people used to transport their stuff, using trucks for 40K. Now they have been forced to go and do it at 140K. So what does that then mean for the goods that you have to go and then sell? The numbers of, the numbers, if you look at the other day, they say the railway,
They have the number.
they have the numbers. I think there's a lot of problem, in my view, and I think we can salvage it. My worry, however, is that we're not headed there. We look like we're saying, hey,
It's all cool.
let the party go on.
Be happy.
Yeah, it's true.
Mohamed Wehliye, thank you for making time
Thank
to
you,
give
Alibaba.
us a really
Thank you
good,
very much.
objective perspective. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
This was Metropole TV. This was The Smart Investor. My name is Ali Khan Sachu, and we had Mohamed Wehliye from Sama in to discuss the demonetization. And what a great and rich discussion that was too. See you back here tomorrow at 8 p.m.